The Miami Dolphins officially made their hire at GM earlier today with Jon-Eric Sullivan, former VP of Player Personnel with the Green Bay Packers. We broke that down earlier, so if you want more information on him, go watch those videos. It's on the channel. But now on this episode, we're going to talk about what's next for the Miami Dolphins. What does this hire mean for the head coaching search? Plus, does it also mean a next quarterback, I should say the next QB1 of the Miami Dolphins, might actually be Malik Willis? We'll get into that later on in the show. But this is why you subscribe today. We're 114 away from 79.5K. We have had you up to date on everything. Mike McDaniel, the GM search. We went live for the firing and hiring, and we'll continue to have you covered. So join the channel. But before we get into some of the rumors that might be next, I want to highlight Jon-Eric Sullivan in a very brief way here. How about this little information here? Jon-Eric Sullivan was twice honored by his peers as one of the Bart lists in 2025 and 2022. The only two other executives that are currently general managers to be recognized by their peers for this award: Elliott Wolf, the GM for the Patriots. Yeah, I think he's doing a pretty good job. And Adam Peters of the Commanders, also doing a pretty fine job. So hopefully Jon-Eric Sullivan brings that to the 305. But one last thing here. Troy Aikman was hired as a consultant for the Dolphins GM search. This GM search went very quickly. Apparently, Aikman was the biggest Jon-Eric Sullivan supporter entering this week and probably throughout. So it's good that we brought in this external consultant in Troy Aikman to help the search party, which consisted of Dan Marino, Brandon Shore, Danny Silsman, Tom Garfinkel, and owner Stephen Ross. Because without Aikman, who knows who the Dolphins hire at GM? It might not be Jon-Eric Sullivan, but a lot of us, and I've been saying it all week long, believed he was the best candidate for Miami, and they ultimately got him. But let's talk about the next head coach of Miami now, because Sully, which is what he likes to be called, either J.E. or Sully, so we'll probably call him Sully going forward. He has a ton of connections around the NFL due to his time in Green Bay and really working across the NFL for 20-plus years. He's been in the league for a long time. And maybe this points to Jeff Hafley being the top candidate for the Dolphins head coaching position. There has been many different insiders, highlighted by Mike Garafolo and Tom Pelissero, two of the best in the business, both working for NFL Network. They both immediately promoted a potential pairing of Hafley and Sullivan in Miami as the next head coach and GM. So who is Hafley as a potential head coach? Well, he actually was a head coach not in the NFL, but at the college level. He was the head coach at Boston College for 4 years, and although he did not have the most success with the Eagles, I don't think you can look at it and be like, how is he going to be an NFL head coach candidate? He sucked at college. Well, Boston College is maybe the worst Division I program in all of college football, let alone Division I sports. I mean, they do not put any resources into their basketball program or football program. It's honestly surprising considering where they are located in the United States. But he had them as a winning team twice, 6-6 1 year. I'm not going to come up here and try to act like he was the best college coach of all time, but he certainly got an opportunity in the NFL and started to crush it. I mean, he's been the Packers defensive coordinator the last 2 seasons, and this has been a unit that has been ranked in the top 10 at bare minimum top half in the NFL in each of the last 2 years. I mean, you look at them at 2024, they ranked in the top 10 in points, yards, rushing yards, 13th in passing yards allowed. And then this year, top half in the league in points, yards, and passing yards, but did just fall below the league average in rushing yards. Like, I'm not going to come up here and try to act like he is my top candidate. Like, on a blank canvas, is this the person that I want to be the next Dolphins head coach? No, probably not. I would still lean a guy like John Harbaugh or maybe a Jesse Minter. But he is a candidate that you have to keep an eye on. And I do think the way this GM search ultimately played out, Sully was hired because he had a couple candidates in mind that he believed he could bring to Miami without a shadow of doubt that would be better than Mike McDaniel. And he also said, I don't know if I'd want the job if Mike McDaniel remained as head coach of Miami. I think both of those options may have been true, so we'll have to keep an eye on who Sully wants to bring to Miami as head coach. But who do you want him to bring? And I want you to predict it for me. Who will be the next Dolphins head coach? Will it be Jeff Hafley, or will it be someone else? Well, there's other candidates that have strong connections with Jon-Eric Sullivan, and I think these three are the largest. Anthony Campanile, who, by the way, coached with Miami as a linebackers coach earlier this decade, from 2020 to 2023. Then he hops over and joins the Green Bay Packers organization before being promoted to the Jaguars defensive coordinator position that he holds currently. Mike McCarthy is also an intriguing option, ex-Packers and Cowboys head coach. Obviously, was in Green Bay the same time that Sully has been there. And then Adam Stenavich, the current Packers offensive coordinator, is also an option that Miami will likely take a look at, even though he's probably the lowest on the totem pole. And then there's this name, Matt LaFleur, the current Green Bay Packers head coach. There is some chatter, there are some rumors out there that if the Packers lose this Saturday to the Chicago Bears, there could be a conversation within the Green Bay organization about moving on. Why is that? LaFleur has 1 year left on his contract as head coach of the Packers. They either need to extend him or they need to move on from him. The Packers do not like to have a head coach in a contract year currently coaching their franchise. And Tom Silverstein, a longtime Packers reporter, connected some dots that Green Bay might have to offer LaFleur $12 to $15 million per year to sign an extension in Green Bay. And if the two sides can't reach an agreement, it's hard to believe Sullivan wouldn't be interested in LaFleur. They say if he's the next general manager, this came out before it was official. Now, he also noted that in order for Sullivan to get a crack at him, the Packers would have to fire LaFleur or agree to void the final year of the contract or ask for a compensation from the Dolphins in a potential trade. It's not the most rare occurrence to see a team trade for a head coach. But the truth is, with the rumors out there that kind of got sparked a month and a half ago, if you will, that the Packers could move on from LaFleur if they lose and come up short this year in the wild card round, we're big Bears fans, on Saturday. I mean, could you imagine if the Bears win that game like 27-13? It's like not even close. Chicago just runs away with it. And I get it. They've dealt with a lot of injuries, Micah Parsons and others, but they come up flat this year. Man, oh man, if LaFleur's on the market, he is without a question my top candidate, even higher than what John Harbaugh would be. We're going to talk more about head coaching candidates here in a second. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's officially January, which means you're probably starting a new routine. And if that new routine involves getting it on daily fantasy and playing on Prize Picks, well, that's a good decision. High-pressure playoff matchups every weekend. Elite hoops every night. The action never stops, and Prize Picks lets you take control. Yeah, your fantasy football season's over, but you don't got to wait until next year's draft to keep playing. No draft required. Just pick more or less on at least a couple stat projections in the playoff action this weekend. We just talked about the Bears, right? Yeah, how about Caleb Williams? Max discount currently available on Prize Picks. All you got to do is take more on half a passing yard for the Bears quarterback. Pair that up with another stat projection you like, and you could cash in this weekend. Join me and the millions of others on Prize Picks today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. I think other potential head coach candidates that would work with Sully in Miami are these three: Jesse Minter, Kevin Stefanski, and John Harbaugh. And I get it. A lot of people are going to continue to ask me this. It happened on our live show. Does the hiring of Sullivan mean that Miami is not going to land John Harbaugh as the potential head coach? Because after they fired Mike McDaniel on Thursday, they became the favorites to land John Harbaugh. It seems like a two-horse race between them and New York. And I do actually believe the Giants probably hold the edge at this point after Miami went with Jon-Eric Sullivan, but it doesn't take them out of the race. I'll explain more in a second. But I want to mention Kevin Stefanski. I don't think he would have been the next head coach of Miami if they went out and got a guy like Chad Alexander as GM. I think it would have been Harbaugh or Jesse Minter. But now that it's Sullivan, I think Stefanski could be interesting. Same type of offense ran between him and LaFleur in Green Bay, predicated on a lot under center, but also handing it off, playing with physicality, and then turning that into a play-action passing game. I think Sullivan, if he wants to build his team the same way that Green Bay has, but can't get LaFleur as his head coach, he would definitely consider Stefanski as one of his options. And hell, maybe if Stefanski doesn't get a head coaching gig this cycle, what if the Dolphins hire Jeff Hafley as defensive or a head coach and then bring in Stefanski as offensive coordinator? That's certainly an interesting option. But I'm not ruling out John Harbaugh just yet. Are the Dolphins still the favorites? Probably not. I would put it back towards New York. But this connection made by Chad Forbes here on Twitter. Sully has been with the Packers 22 years, hired when Bob Harlan was president and CEO of the Packers. John Harbaugh's agent, Brian Harlan, is the son of former Packer president and CEO Bob Harlan. So there is, even though they haven't worked together, a very slight connection. I don't think it puts Miami in the lead, but I do not think you can rule out John Harbaugh to Miami just yet. Let's move on from head coach talk and talk about the next quarterback one of the Miami Dolphins. Everyone's asking, is it going to be Quinn Ewers? Is it going to be someone in the draft? Are they going to keep Tua? What are they going to do with Tua? That's a different conversation for a different day with how Jon-Eric Sullivan will approach this. But it's hard not to discuss the potential idea of adding Malik Willis, who's a pending free agent this offseason, who has played really well in relief of Jordan Love in 2 appearances this season. Malik Willis came in the middle of a game against the Bears in Week 16 in Chicago when Jordan Love got concussed, and then started the following Saturday night on primetime at home against the Baltimore Ravens. And he was absolutely phenomenal in both games. I mean, look at the QB rating he had. Look at the completion percentage. 80% or higher in both of those games. No interceptions. Combined for over 100 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. He looked absolutely phenomenal. He looked like a starting quarterback, a top 32 QB in the NFL in those 2 games. And I imagine there is going to be about 7 or 8 teams looking for a new quarterback this offseason. I did the math on the live show. I think you have Miami, you have Pittsburgh, you have the Jets, you have the Raiders, you have the Browns, you have the Vikings potentially, the Colts. All these teams are looking for a new quarterback. So Malik Willis, he might have a lot of demand in free agency, but you also have to factor in the draft. You have to factor in the trade market, Mac Jones, maybe Kyler Murray becoming available. Daniel Jones is a free agent. Aaron Rodgers is a free agent. So it certainly will be interesting in terms of how much demand there is for Malik Willis in free agency, which is where Miami could ultimately be priced out of potentially signing him this offseason. But you absolutely would have to imagine Jon-Eric Sullivan would show interest, knows what he's worth in free agency, what he's willing to sign him to a contract, and Miami will absolutely show interest in Malik Willis. It'll just be all a matter of what contract he demands in free agency. And before I round out the show, next QB1 of the Dolphins, is it Malik Willis? Do you think Miami should sign him? Type S for sign or type P for pass. Let me know your thoughts. I'll be very clear about this. I'll be intrigued with him being a quarterback for Miami next season. Do I think he's the future franchise? Can't go that far. Would it be a nice, fun option in like a gap year before Miami has to make a decision with a potential top 10 pick and $100 million in cap space in 2027? Yeah. Which means I'm willing to do the Vikings Sam Darnold deal or the Colts Daniel Jones deal. A 1-year, $10 to $14 million contract. Miami can't really afford much more than that if we're going to be honest anyway. So it's very limited in terms of their ability to sign Malik Willis. But if Willis is capable and willing to bet on himself and the fit in Miami potentially with whoever they bring in as head coach and offensive coordinator, and Sullivan wants to bring him in on a 1-year, $12, $13 million contract, I would very much welcome that. Because if he balls out, you extend him, and maybe that's the next QB1 of Miami. If it doesn't go so well and they're picking inside the top 5, well, guess what? We'll probably be drafting one in 2027 with a projected loaded quarterback class at $127 million in cap space. Gives Miami an option, but I don't think Miami is going to be able to sign him if he gets a 3-year, $45 million deal per se that Dan Orlovsky alluded to on ESPN, saying he's going to get $45 million this offseason. I don't know if he was talking about total or AAV. Either way, Miami's probably not doing that. But this type of contract, absolutely. That'll do it for today's episode. We're going to continue to bring you content over the weekend and keep you updated on the Dolphins head coaching search, which will begin this weekend and really start to ramp up next week. So subscribe and join us.